An AEW star is gone from the company. We're going to talk about that in just a little bit. We're going to kick things off with some very big news surrounding Jeff Hardy. That's right. GCW made an official announcement today that Jeff Hardy is set to debut at GCW, and it's going to be happening the night before SummerSlam in Detroit at Harpo's venue. And yeah, Jeff Hardy is going to be going to GCW. Now, here's the little twist. Because GCW didn't clarify this when they actually made the announcement, but they later on revealed Jeff Hardy will not be wrestling for GCW. So he's going to appear on the show. Now, in what capacity, I have literally no idea. I'm assuming it's probably going to be some sort of angle or something like that. Maybe some sort of appearance, cameo, whatever. Nice little pop, big moment, that type of thing. And then actually after the event, GCW is selling tickets. I believe it's coming from GCW, but basically what's going to be happening is that Jeff Hardy will be doing a performance of some sort. Now, this is really interesting. Harpo's is a very long time concert venue in Detroit. GCW appears to go there every so often, which typically does great with the crowds. I've gone to a couple shows. Honestly, they've all been pretty awesome. Look, Jeff Hardy, we all know his situation. It's really important that he stays healthy and everything's going well for him. So as you can imagine, when I seen that he got announced for GCW, I was kind of excited, but I totally understand why he's not wrestling. And it totally makes sense. And obviously, you know, this is not relatively new. We've heard, you know, before from Matt Hardy that basically Jeff was kind of calming down with the indie bookings and stuff like that. So look, whether or not he's wrestling, I don't think that really matters. Just the fact that it'll be there will be really cool. Now, what he does there is going to be very interesting, but from my understanding, this is like maybe his first or second indie appearance outside of AEW, which is obviously relatively pretty cool. It feels like Jeff Hardy going to indie shows now feels a little bit more special. So there's always that pro to it. Obviously, Jeff Hardy going to GCW, there's a lot of great people in that roster. Jeff Hardy in his prime probably would have done some awesome stuff in GCW, but the reality is that's not necessarily the case. But still a very cool moment. We're going to see him in Detroit. If you guys are going, you know, to Detroit for SummerSlam weekend, that show will be taking place the night before at Harpo's, and you'll be able to see Jeff Hardy. And then obviously there's tickets for sale if you want to see him perform his music. Not my type of music, so I don't know if I would stay for that. But if you guys are into that kind of thing, definitely check it out. WWE has a superstar that is reportedly going to Hollywood, Drew McIntyre. There was this new report that came out that basically Drew McIntyre has an acting role available to him. And this is really interesting. So PW Insider reported that Drew McIntyre will be starring in an action film titled The Killer's Game. The movie has former WWE superstar Batista and Big Three owner, you guys might know Ice Cube, actor, musician. He owns the Big Three. Ice Cube is also in this movie. And this is going to be really interesting. Drew McIntyre going the Hollywood route is a very intriguing move. It's an intriguing thing to me. And, you know, anytime somebody would talk about, you know, Drew McIntyre possibly leaving WWE for AEW, honestly, I could see Drew McIntyre having great matches in AEW. I could see him having great matches in New Japan. As a fan, I say this often. It'd be really cool. It'd be really cool to see Drew McIntyre have some of those matchups that are dream matches, right? But Drew McIntyre does strike me as a guy who could make it in Hollywood. And look, maybe I'm biting off more than I could chew, but the reality is I feel like Drew McIntyre is a very good character in WWE. I think he did a fantastic job during the pandemic for the WWE. And most importantly, I think Drew McIntyre, look, like the reality is he's a top guy in the WWE. If he chooses not to re-sign with WWE, him going Hollywood, it makes a lot of sense to use WWE in that way to get him there, right? And that's one of the reasons why I think it's important to have a good relationship with these companies. You don't want to leave these companies on bad terms. WWE has relationships. AEW has relationships. If you're somebody who wants to get into acting, man, if you want to leave wrestling, it makes a lot of sense. I understand why wrestling's a huge, you know, platform for people to use that as, you know, to jump, right? It's a great idea. And I think Drew McIntyre being in this movie probably won't be a big role. I'm just guessing. I'm just kind of assuming. It probably ain't going to be a big role, but it's going to be really interesting to see what he does. There's other wrestlers who have turned actors, and some of them have panned out and some of them haven't. I do have some sort of confidence in Drew McIntyre that he could be really good at it, and we'll see what happens there. But I do want to point out that, you know, Batista and Ice Cube are two pretty damn big names in the world of film. So this is not like, this is something that could potentially be a big film. And that's my point. And we'll see what Drew McIntyre does. And listen, when the movie comes out, I'll watch it. I'll tell you guys what I think. But for now, let's see what happens. And that brings us to our final story of today's video. A little bit shocking, guys. I definitely didn't expect this, but it appears that Brian Pillman Jr. is no longer in AEW. Yeah, he was recently removed from the AEW roster on the company website. Now, it's not confirmed by AEW themselves that he is gone, but this is pretty much how it works every single time, right? If you look at somebody who's on the roster, they get released or they get removed, you know, whatever it may be, they're no longer on the website. And usually that's the first sign that this person's not there. Now, I remember an interview, and I can't remember whose podcast it was, and I'll try to find it, and I'll put it in the comments when I look for it. But I remember Brian Pillman Jr. was on a podcast maybe this year or last year, and he was talking a little bit about his AEW run, and it was like something about Julia Hart not being with them anymore. And he was just kind of bothered by that, right? Julia Hart wasn't with the Varsity Blondes or whatever, and it just essentially been a thing where it seemed like it kind of left a little sour taste for him. And he truly believed in the potential of it, and it was one of those things where it's like, I can understand that. And look, if you want to compare apples to apples, I don't know if Julia Hart makes House of Black bigger and better and more popular. I don't. I think she's great in that role, and it was obviously a huge 180 from what she was doing before. But if you're looking at babyface tag teams, yeah, there was something really cool about the Varsity Blondes that could have worked. Maybe it was, you know, still in its early stages, but I do think there is potential there. And obviously, he probably wanted to do more. My guess is that his contract ran out and he's no longer with the company, because that's typically how this all goes down. And look, you know, we know Fuego del Sol's leaving the company. A lot of people are going to be leaving the company. I'm going to throw this out there because I think it's a really good thing for WWE to look at. When you look at NXT, Brian Pillman Jr. would fit very well in WWE. And look, I'm not saying he's going to go into WWE and be a world champion and all these types of things. You know, that's not how I look at wrestling. But I look at wrestling where everybody has a role and everybody has some potential there. And then I'm going to be real with you guys. I think this could be a good thing for WWE if they choose to pick him up. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, there's a lot of things potentially in the works here. For AEW, they got a big roster. They got a lot of people to work with. I think it's really important that they utilize people. But Brian Pillman Jr., it's not really a big loss to AEW, but it's always going to be one of those things where I wonder, what could they have done differently? And I do think they could have done things differently. That doesn't mean it's the highest priority, but it definitely tells me that there's other things that could be done. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below, and I'll see you next time.